to Joe Goes Everywhere, a Big Blend radio food, wine, and travel podcast featuring award-winning photographer and travel writer Joe Clark. Let's find out where she's taking us today. So you know Joe goes everywhere around the world, across the country, and today she's taking us to her hometown region of Myrtle Beach. We're going to go a little further down to Georgetown County. Did I get that right, Joe, this time?
Yes, you did.
Georgetown. And we've been there, actually. Nancy and I have been to Georgetown. It is just beautiful, and that region is gorgeous. And I think what's so awesome about your area is you have the beach and you got the swampies, and I think we're going to be talking about a swampy fox today. Is that right?
We might mention a certain swamp fox.
A swamp fox, not swampy, but a swamp fox. Well, he could be swampy. We can call him swampy.
He was probably swampy too.
Yeah, exactly. All right, that's good. But yeah, I'm excited about this because I think Myrtle Beach, people know about Myrtle Beach and they go to the beach, they ride their bicycles, they do kind of the main things to do, but you're always taking us on detours, even in your hometown, you know, going out in the Grand Strand area, go to these restaurants that you may not have heard of, go do these activities, go beyond. And that's what we're doing today.
So much more to do than just the beach.
But we like the beach. You walked on the beach.
I love the beach. I already put in my 4 miles this morning.
Oh, that's awesome. So you're taking us to, I want to see if I get this right, Hobcaw and Yawkey. So Hobcaw. So Georgetown, so it's south of Myrtle Beach. Is it on that highway we talked about on the road trip show?
It is. It's on 17. If you leave Myrtle Beach, it'll take you about 45 minutes to get to Georgetown. Okay. I'm a little further south to start with, so it doesn't take me quite as long, more like 35.
Okay, so easy. And this is where nature
and day trip.
Oh, yeah. See, that's...
Yeah, you drive down there and spend the morning at a place and then eat lunch somewhere and spend the afternoon maybe in the Maritime Museum or taking a walking tour with Paige Sawyer, and then have dinner. Maybe see a live show and come back.
Or stay there for the night.
Baxter's will be happy to have you.
Is that the one with the beer?
I was going to say, it's the only bed and brew in South Carolina.
See, I would like to stay there. Thank you very much.
You would.
I do. I love my brews. You know I do. So the Georgetown, you go down south, but so Hobcaw and Yawkey are like towns within the county, or give us an overview because it seems so natural, but the nature really has so much history. And South Carolina has amazing history. It really diverse.
It does indeed. Hobcaw and Yawkey are both huge amounts of land, acreage that has been donated or is in a trust forever, and it surrounds Georgetown. Hobcaw you get to right before you cross the first bridge that goes into Georgetown, and then Yawkey is further in, and it encompasses actually 3 different islands off the coast of Georgetown. So these aren't towns, but they are made up of original plantations and land grants from the King of England that go back to the...
Wow. So the 1700s, right? And then you've got all the Native American history there too.
You do. That's where the name Hobcaw Barony, Hobcaw is between the waters, because in that area, Hobcaw and Georgetown itself is blessed with 4 different rivers that come in, and they're pouring into the Winyah Bay, which is another Indian word, an Indian tribe or Native American tribe, the Winyahs, the Atlantic Ocean. So, we're surrounded by water. And then these 2 jewels of nature, Hobcaw Barony, which was a land grant. And barony doesn't mean that it went to a baron. Mm-hmm. It's not that kind of a word. The word barony is a measure of land. It actually means 12,000 acres. So the King of England granted to one of the Lord Proprietors of the Carolinas 12,000 acres, a barony. And the barony that he was given was Hobcaw Barony. It had that name because of the original area was called Hobcaw. And I can't think of this first part of his name, but the Lord Proprietor was Cataract. I think I'm saying that right. And he's the one that also had The cataract name is very big in the like Nag's Head and Outer Banks area. So I don't know if he or maybe his family were given several different baronies or land grants.
So you mean from North Carolina down?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure about that part, but I know that the one that was given this section, the 12,000 acres outside of Georgetown, Hobcaw, never saw the land. I think he held it something like 12 or 15 years maybe, but he sold the land without ever seeing it.
Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
If he'd ever seen it, I bet he'd have kept it.
I know, because I know that region is so gorgeous. I love the balance between the swampy marshland and the ocean. There's just something very cleansing about it. It's like things get to, and the frogs live in there, and I love frogs.
And you love those frogs.
And gators. And gators.
And gators. And I'd rather see the dolphin and the eagles.
And now you have beautiful bald eagle pictures. So this is like a bird watching area for sure.
Yes, it is. You mentioned Belle earlier, that this was an area where she was an avid bird watcher, and her binoculars are on display in the museum there at Hobcaw Barony in the Nature Center. Those were the binoculars that she then used when she was watching for enemy invaders to our coast.
So Belle Baruch, am I saying it?
Yep.
Okay, well, so everyone, we've got an article from Joe and a past podcast that was on our Women Making History show. That link is in the episode notes, and Joe's article goes to recipestravelculture.com, is also in the episode notes about the Hobcaw and Yawkey. Man, I don't know, you never come on a show with anything I can pronounce, but I'm trying.
You're doing great.
But it's a beautiful thing about travel, right? But Belle Baruch, just an amazing woman, because she ended up with all this land, and she was an equestrian woman, right?
She was an equestrian. And at the beginning of World War II, or just before, prior to World War II, her father was appointed to something or other in France. So he was in France, and she went to France and had her horses there and was riding. And she was offered buku bucks for her horse, and basically, like, from kings and prime ministers, big men that thought it wasn't the rider, it was the horse. So they were going to buy the horse, and then they would win all these contests instead of Belle. And she basically said, in effect, your boats aren't big enough to hold enough gold to buy this horse.
Well.
And when she came home at the start of the war, the horses came with her. She brought the horses home, of course.
It's wild, though, going from France to South Carolina with your horses.
Yeah.
Okay.
And talking about horses in South Carolina, we could jump right into your mentioning of the swamp. We bred back in the day, and you can still find these, the marsh tacky horse. The marsh tacky is the only horse that could maneuver in the swamp and in the pluff mud without sinking down and being just hopelessly entrapped in the murk and mire. So,
wow.
Our guys had the marsh tacky, and during the Revolution, that's what the swamp fox and his men were riding. And the swamp fox, of course, is Francis Marion, and he was immortalized in the movie. So people know a little about the swamp fox, but not a lot.
Yeah, tell everybody about that, for those who may not have seen the movie, who he is, because man, this is kind of an incredible story, and you can follow in his footsteps.
Yep, you can. And as a matter of fact, I just talked with my friend Paige Sawyer this morning, who leads walking tours in Georgetown, and he has started a new tour following in Francis Marion's footsteps. So I have to go to Georgetown. We have another podcast coming, because I'm going to have to go and do that tour.
I thought you were going to Florida too. Okay, well, who knows what's happening next month, y'all?
You just never know with me, do you? Mm-mm. Whoever invites me first.
That out there.
I know, really. But the Swamp Fox, The Patriot, was the name of the movie. You caught me off guard telling me to come up with that, but I did it. But The Patriot is the name of the movie, and it is pretty much the story of the swamp fox, Francis Marion, and he and his men would fight and then run away and hide in the swamp. They would cut through the swamps, and that the way he got the name was a British general said of Francis Marion, "As for this damned old fox, the devil himself couldn't catch him." Ooh. So he became the swamp fox. And that was really, that was the beginning of the guerrilla warfare. You don't just line up in your spit and polished boots and red coats and march across a field, and the other guys march straight at you. And when you're close enough to shoot, you shoot.
We're playing swampy sneak attack.
Yeah. You don't live long doing that. So, you hide behind trees and cut through the swamp and climb a tree if you have to. But I think that really, really started the guerrilla warfare tactics. People saw that you could do this and win. Wow. Thank goodness.
Yeah. So, wow, this is like some intense history. So you've got all the Native American history. And so there's museums and, different nature centers that you can go to in both these areas?
Yes, both Hobcaw and Yawkey have nature centers. Yawkey is run by the DNR, Department of Natural Resources, and we'll talk about how that was developed and who started that. People listening are already saying, Yawkey, I kind of know that name. That has something to do with baseball. Yes, it does. We'll get around to that. But right now, talking about Hobcaw Barony was actually one of the last land grants from the King of England to anybody. And then, like I said, it was 12,000 acres. So there were 4,000 more purchased and that were adjacent. So it's actually, Hobcaw is 16,000 acres now. And it was the first time that Bernard Baruch went there, he was a paying customer, and he came, and it was a hunting lodge, a hunting retreat where you could pay and come and hunt. Because somewhere in the turn of the century, 1900s, not 2000s, but at that turn of the century, people were figuring out that we had all these plantations along the waterways, and it was perfect for duck hunting, deer hunting, a wealth of wildlife. The land, as a Southerner, you hate to think that people from somewhere else came here and bought up our land, but if they hadn't, we wouldn't have the reserves that we have today. These were people who came that had the money to buy huge amounts of land and not develop them into high-rise condominiums as time went on. These were people who bought that land and saw that this should be preserved forever. And Bernard and his daughter Belle, she was 6 when he bought Hobcaw, and they were in New York. So they would come back and forth and spend falls and springs and maybe even winters here, much better weather. But they would spend time here, and she just fell in love with the land and the animals and the shore. So she grew up with that love for Hobcaw and the South Carolina coastline.
I don't blame her.
I know. So she was out of the 3 children. I think she had a brother and a sister. And so out of the 3, she was the one who wanted Hobcaw. She wanted to stay in South Carolina. She wanted this land. She wanted her horses. She was the outdoorsy one of the bunch. And so she inherited and was given parts of Hobcaw over the years. And then she bought more parts. And by 1956, she owned the whole thing. Yeah. And she
That's pretty big for a woman too.
For a woman. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. She was something else. She knew what she wanted and she went after it. She wasn't afraid of it. And she was over 6 feet tall. So she was a big woman in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Don't mess with her.
Yep. Belle says, and that's all people needed to hear. Belle says,
yeah,
we're driving with no lights because it's World War II and we're supposed to be blacked out. Belle says, tomorrow we're rolling bandages. And she wasn't just, barking orders. If Belle said we're rolling bandages for the soldiers, Belle was rolling them too. It wasn't that she was giving other people orders. She was taking that on herself. So she was
a leader.
She was very much a leader. The Hobcaw, you can go through the museum or the Discovery Center, and it's no charge to go through that. In order to wander the property, that doesn't happen. You have to be on actual tours, and they have the smaller, like 6 people, little buses with air conditioning, which is important here.
Oh, yeah.
but they will take you on different tours. And it's a lot of variety. One goes, I think, maybe just to Friendfield Village, which is the most popular thing at Hobcaw, maybe, as far as seeing how the smaller slave villages were and how they were developed, and the church and where the doctor lived and that kind of thing. But there are other villages. There are 4 different villages in all at Hobcaw, and most of those are not seen by the public very often. I was fortunate that I did an all-day tour, so I did 4 hours at Hobcaw and 4 hours at Yawkey. And so I saw lots of things that are not on most of the tours. But it wasn't a private tour by any means. So if you sign up for it, you can see it all too. But the 4 villages that during the tour, they discuss the history of the village and through oral interpretations and the stories that have been handed down over the years, historical photographs. There's a barnyard village, strawberry village. There's one cabin, just one by itself, Adderley, and that was actually once owned by Joseph and Theodosia Burr Alston. So there's just more and more history, and you get out into these areas and you just think, how did people live like this?
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
And it amazes me.
Yeah,
and,
that's
our forefathers went through a lot for us to be here.
Yeah, when you think about how that history and how people were living, swampy land is not the easiest. We don't have AC. You didn't have any of that stuff, right? We didn't have pest control so much.
We didn't have screens on the windows.
No,
so you had lots of mosquitoes.
I remember going Okefenokee Swamp in Georgia. It's my thing. I love it there. And there's gators, of course. And there's Chester Island. And there's a house where those people, Chesters, used to live. And I think they were also doing sugar out there or something. I could be wrong on that. But I think so. There was something going on. And it makes sense. But I went and I'm sitting there going, I personally would live there, personally. And I've lived in places like that. But I'm older now and going, I need
not so much.
Yeah, and I do want to.
Lost its appeal, hasn't it?
And I really do. I sit there, but it's very romanticized in my mind of what it would be. But because as you're standing there, you're going, dang, this mosquito, dang, that's getting me. There's it's biodiverse and we love that. We want that. But dang, these people live there.
Yep. But then you also have to think about how they dressed. We're getting eaten up by mosquitoes because we've got on a V-neck and our neck's exposed. We have on short sleeves or sleeveless. So we're getting eat up by the mosquitoes. They were in high collar dresses and long sleeves. They had almost nothing exposed. So they probably weren't getting eaten alive like us.
Hot. They were sweating.
But, to me, that would just be hot and
that would
miserable.
Drive me.
I couldn't peel off enough clothes to be comfortable.
Yeah, and then you think about the Native Americans who were just in a different kind of, living quarters, right? But then I think they use a lot of mud too. I mean, that's, I think that's something even animals do if you're out in the
elephants.
The elephants, yeah. And I'm not comparing Americans.
Put yourself in mud in the bug.
Yeah, I did that. When I lived in the bush, that's what we did. You put mud on you so they don't get to go through as much and actually saves your skin. But then later when I didn't do that, now my skin is gone. It's ripped to shreds thanks to the beautiful sun and me being silly. But if you put mud, it really does protect you. And indigenous people know that. They live with the land. They work with the land. They understand the land so much better at times. Yeah, I wonder about that. So you have the indigenous people and here's the people dressed up to the nines going, y'all, put some mud on. I don't know. Maybe they didn't do the mud out there. I don't know, but I'm kind of thinking they may have. Who knows? Yeah. So now go ahead.
I was just going to say at Hobcaw, they also out in the lobby have over 1,000-gallon saltwater aquarium with lots of the native fish. So while you're there, you can see what you can't see underwater. And there's another exhibit of the longleaf pine. The longleaf pine is where the red cockaded woodpeckers live. That's the only tree they make their holes and live in those trees, the longleaf pines. So when we lost a lot of those, that's why these birds became endangered. So as those trees are replanted and coming back, we're seeing a lot more of the woodpeckers coming back and nesting.
Aren't they
And they,
endangered still? Are they
yeah,
endangered
they
still?
are. They're
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
endangered, but not like they were. And so the bluebirds and the woodpeckers are being watched at Hobcaw. And if you're there at the right time, sometimes you'll see the camera. There's cameras that are on some of those nests, and while you're going through the lobby, you'll see the like the display where you can stand and watch the birds in their nesting.
Hmm. That's cool.
Pretty cool.
That's really cool to see, man. That's awesome. So how far is Yawkey from Hobcaw? I just want to keep saying Yawkey and Hobcaw.
It's probably about 30 minutes because you have to go into Georgetown. So you're crossing two bridges up and two bodies of water, two rivers. Intercoastal waterway comes through there. And then you go to the other end of Georgetown and cross a body of water there going back out of town. And then not too far down from that, maybe 10, 15 minutes.
Okay, cool. That's not far. That's a good adventure, that sounds to me.
It
So,
is.
yeah. And Yawkey has, a nature center too?
Yes, it is a wildlife center. Tom Yawkey and his wife Jean left all the land to DNR, to the state of South Carolina.
Oh.
So that I'm running through my head because I'm skipping pages in my story of my head. But they had 24,000 acres on the coast of South Carolina, right there below Georgetown. And that includes 3 different islands along the mouth of the Winyah Bay. So you can take tours, you can take a boat tour out of Georgetown, actually. One of them is popularly called the Shell Island Tour because you go across the water and you pass by North and South Island, you pass by the lighthouse and Cat Island, but you get off the boat for an hour or so, hour and a half, I think, onto North Island, and you can pick up shells if you find conch shells and whelk shells. But all of that then is right outside of the city of Georgetown, and you leave from the dock right in downtown Georgetown off the historic dock. We went all the way down to Yawkey where Cat Island is. But again, it's an island, so you still can't drive there. You park, and there's a boat dock, and it's straight across. I mean, it's like crossing I don't know, 4 or 6 lane highway, but you can't do it without a boat. So we met them there, and they had the pontoon and took us across to Cat Island. Cool. Yeah, and there are some people that still live on Cat Island, but they work for DNR now.
Okay.
I can't remember, but I don't think anyone has resided on Cat Island in about 15 years now.
Wow.
But it hasn't been long because the people, even when he bought it, there were people that lived on Cat Island and they stayed there. And then when it was given to the state, that was their home. They still stayed there. And there's a school and church, and there are rice mills. So it's very, very interesting to take the half day or all day tour, and you take your lunch and eat as you drive. But it's fascinating to learn how they manage the rice fields and where people lived, and it's beautiful. It's just,
that's cool.
Carolina Gold rice is probably the best rice you'll ever eat, and you can buy it. There's still a couple of rice growers. Most of them, believe it or not, are like in Kansas and Oklahoma, I think. Kind of weird.
But they just, there are connections like that, but it's, the rice thing. Right now we're getting all these warnings about rice, and it's about, if you eat local rice, you're not going to get all this stuff in it that you shouldn't.
That's right.
So when you talk about getting Carolina rice, I'm more apt to do that than hope it comes from another country that may have been poisoned with lead and stuff like that.
Yeah, right.
I'm just saying, it's news now, hitting the
You're
news
right.
now. And that's something as we travel, when you can buy things like grains and rice and things that we kind of take for granted as part of our meal. And we have celiac disease issues in our country, and it comes from how we are growing the grains. It's not the actual grain. And so we need to look at how things are done. And I think, if we can support small farmers, we're going to be healthier for it.
Absolutely. I agree.
Sorry, I had to
And
get my
one,
plug in there for farmers. I love my
it's
farmers.
true though.
Yeah.
And once you taste, I've got a friend in Virginia that is he won't eat anything but Carolina gold rice. It's like anybody that comes to South Carolina, he says, "Bring me back some rice." Because we have it
Is it
at
golden?
Brookgreen. Yeah, it's kind of a golden hue to it. And it's a beautiful polished rice. You get to play with that when you go to, well, at Yawkey and at Hobcaw, they have displays where you can winnow, and you use almost a huge mortar and pestle, but it's, the stick is like, I don't know, 3 feet long. And so you're using that in a wooden bowl to break loose the rice from the surrounding little, it's like separating the wheat and the chaff. It's that covering around the rice. You're trying to get to the middle, to that rice
Yeah.
grain in the middle. So you have to break away all the other stuff and toss. They had big winnowing, almost a flat basket where you would flip it, and like the wind could catch that light chaff and blow it away, and you would be left just with the rice.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
That's
interesting
fascinating.
to learn how it happens and how to do it, and do a little of it yourself. And you're like, wow. And
Well,
they were
that's cool. You
it
know?
is. It's
Yeah.
cool to learn how things were done by hand. It gives you a new appreciation of the people that went before you, as we've said before.
I agree. I agree. But even thinking about rice, I mean, how many of us just eat the rice and say, yeah, it comes from a plant on a hillside with water, and someone just
Yeah.
picks it and then we eat
Yeah,
it?
somebody picks it and puts it in, and it couldn't be further from the truth.
Because it has to be dried too after that.
Those fields have to be flooded for a certain length of time and then drained. It's time and tide. Interesting.
Well, I mean, I love it when you talk about South Carolina, because I think it gets it, because people know places like we say Myrtle Beach and certain specific places. And then it's like, but all of these hidden gems really teach us about history and things that are today as well.
Yes. And they do. I think if you take your kids to things like this so that they start learning bits and pieces about how things are done, then you won't have somebody that is surprised that hamburger isn't ham. It didn't come from a pig.
Did you just say that?
Yes, I saw that. I saw this woman on the internet not long ago, and she was chewing out the server in a restaurant because she had ordered a hamburger. And when it came, she looked at it and she said, "That was not ham." And he said, "No, you didn't order ham. You ordered a hamburger."
Okay, wait. So, okay. Wait. I have to bring this up. Okay. So this is why travel is so important. So we had chicken fried steak, and Nancy sent her chicken fried steak and said, tastes great, but this isn't chicken.
It's not chicken.
We're not from the South, right?
Yep.
And they looked at her and were like, uh-oh, get her a glass of wine.
What?
No, it's not chicken. So she says, well, why do you say it's chicken? Because he says it's chicken fried steak. And she goes, but why is it chicken fried steak if there's no chicken in the steak?
Because it's steak fried like a chicken, battered and fried.
But this is why you travel.
This is why you travel.
This is why you travel.
It is.
It's like, oh, well, I didn't know that, because you see it on menus or something and you have no clue. But at least we're trying things new,
Yeah.
So now I know to go for this rice, kind of gold rice.
Definitely. You'll be hooked. It's delicious.
Very cool. So do they make rice pudding with it?
I know that I've had rice pudding made from it, but it would be good.
Have a nice color.
I'll have to try that.
Yeah. Very cool. So we're just going to have to find out what's up next month with you, because you never know. You have all these different adventures, and boy, so Joe goes everywhere, and Have Glass will travel.
And I'll drag you along with me.
I know. I love following you on
I'll
social
take my
media,
glass
too.
and travel and tell you all about it.
I know that's not South Carolina wine either.
No, but it's North Carolina wine.
Oh, well, okay. Yancey County?
Yadkin.
Where's
Yadkin Valley.
Where's Yancey?
This is Stony Knoll, and this is their Vintner's Blush. No, Bliss.
Well.
Sorry, Bliss.
Well, you get to blush before you say you're in bliss.
That's true.
But where's Yancey now? Why do I have Yancey stuck in my head? Well, I'll figure it out. Isn't there Yancey?
I know where Yanceyville is, but we haven't talked about it. Yanceyville, North Carolina is pretty close to Greensboro.
Oh, maybe I've just been through there and got them twirled.
Could
Who
be.
knows? Yeah,
Could
who
be.
knows? When you travel, it can happen. Well, we can't wait for next time. So enjoy your rest of your wine. You've taken your walk, so you're allowed, right?
I've had my walk, and it is 7 o'clock on a Sunday night. I can kick
Yeah.
back and enjoy.
Well, it's summer season, and it's
That's why.
exciting.
That's why I have the rosé.
She's got the and the
Later.
bliss. She's blissful.
That's
I love
it.
that you talked about these two places because I want to encourage people, travel is different this year and road tripping is getting bigger and bigger. And to put places like this on your road trip map, a little bit off the beaten path, but where you're going to explore history and nature and good food and take your kids if you're going. I think we need to make an appeal for station wagons. I was talking about this on another show the other day.
That way you have a place to lay down and sleep, and you have a tailgate for your kitchen table.
Well, you're smart. She's got it.
Yeah,
She's got
not
it.
just a pretty face.
Well, she's blissful and blushful. All right. So everyone, Joe Goes Everywhere is the Instagram account to follow Joe. On Facebook, she is Have Glass Will Travel. You can go to her main website, haveglasswilltravel.com. Her article is on her other website, recipestravelculture.com, which is when you go in there, man, you're going to get a taste of everything. Wine pairings with macarons. You're going to go all over. And of course, that is linked in the episode notes as well as the article on our site on Belle Baruch.
Belle Baruch.
Belle Baruch. Man, that I couldn't believe it when you told me that story. I was like, are you kidding me? These stories of these women are absolutely incredible. And that took a cake for me on all of the women's history shows. When you brought her up, I was like, well, this is like a story out of nowhere that people don't know. And this is why
because she wouldn't tell it. She wouldn't tell her own story.
See, it's the silent
people that wanted to write something about her had to interview her friends because they couldn't get it out of Belle. And we never doubled back and talked about Yawkey.
Go back.
Thomas Austin Yawkey. His father died just 7 months after he was born. He was in Detroit. His mother, Augusta Yawkey Austin, moved her family, Tom and his sister, to New York, where she had a brother. And I think that's when he sort of switched his name at some point, because he's Tom Austin Yawkey, but his uncle is Bill Yawkey. And I'm trying to figure out how Augusta Yawkey Austin got in there. So I think maybe because his father had died, he took his Uncle Bill's last name and his mother's maiden name. So there's a little mystery there I'm going to work on. But he lost Uncle Bill and his mother to the Spanish flu epidemic. More history there, 1918. Thousands and thousands of people died from that flu. So he was an orphan at 16 and inherited. He was the heir to a $20 million fortune. And this was back in I want to say 1919 when his mother died, those 2 years. He was 16 years old and had $20 million. He went to Yale, graduated with honors.
Back then, that's massive.
I know. No telling what that's worth now. And so at the age of 30, I guess his birthday present to himself, he loved baseball. And the Boston Red Sox at that time, apparently, and they had a very low price tag, and he bought the Boston Red Sox and the stadium, which was in deplorable condition. I think he put almost $2 million into renovating the stadium. So he saved the stadium. So again, we've got a story of somebody that's using their money to build up the community where they live. And he was the owner and the president of the Sox until he died in 1976. When his wife took over, was the first woman to be a director of the Cooperstown National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. And she still, I think, is the only woman to have served on the board of the Hall of Fame. But they loved South Carolina. They came, they found this area, and his Uncle Bill had purchased a little bit of land that was a hunt club, again, a northerner that came down in 1914 and loved the area and loved hunting. After his uncle died, Tom Yawkey started buying up the land surrounding that and turned it into a wildlife refuge.
Isn't that nice? when people
It
do the
is.
right
It's
things with
just
their money,
amazing.
when they're
'Cause
lifting up instead of
yeah,
taking away. And because that their legacy goes on forever that way. When you're
it does.
giving to
It
the
does.
community, you're setting, that's leadership in action to
It
me.
is. And
Because how much can you do with all your dollars? Really, what can you do?
when,
Just
yeah, when you've got all those
come on.
millions and millions,
What are you going to do? I mean, to me, give it away.
and they didn't have children. They married late in life, and I don't think they had any children from a previous marriage either. I can't remember reading anything about that. But when he died, she took over and managed all the business and the team. So when that team was sold, that money went into trust. So even though DNR is running Yawkey, there is a Yawkey Foundation that has the money now to pay the people at the Wildlife Center. And it's just, they hired their own biologists. They have techniques in improving the land that people come from all over the world to study. So it's
Cool.
really cool.
Really cool. That's an inspiring story for a Sunday. I love that. I love that. Everyone, every second Sunday at what time, Joe?
7:00.
I just had to do that too.
Bring your wine and listen in.
Well, cheers to you. We can't wait for next month to find out what shenanigans you got yourself into.
I'll do my best.
I know.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for joining us. Keep up with Big Blend Radio's Joe Goes Everywhere podcast on bigblendradio.com. Keep up with Joe's adventures. Go to haveglasswilltravel.com and recipestravelculture.com.